Hello guys, welcome back to this session on building Zobots using the different platforms available on Zoho Sales IQ. The next webinar of this series is going to be on building a Zobot using the Watson platform. So I'll quickly give you a brief introduction of Zoho Sales IQ and then the Zobot, all right, and then I'll take you through the steps of building the Zobot using Watson platform. All right, so let me brief you on the agenda. So in the first place, we are going to be looking at the basics of the Zobot, followed by the benefits of using conversational Zobots for your business. And then we'll follow that up with creating a Zobot using the Watson platform. First, we'll create an agent on the Watson platform, and then we'll integrate it with the Sales IQ's Zobot, and then we'll also go ahead and look into the features that are available on the Watson platform. All right, so let's get started right away. So again, as part of all our webinars, we'll have a quick recap of what Zoho Sales IQ is and what the Zobot is. So a lot of you might know what Zoho Sales IQ is. You might have been following our previous webinars. So Zoho Sales IQ is a hassle-free customer messaging software that was designed for support, business growth, sales, marketing, customer management, and so much more. So it's basically live chat, visitor tracking, audio calls, mobile SDKs. Powerful chatbots are main focus during these series of webinars, and so much more rolled onto just one platform. So Zoho Sales IQ offers you features to know who and when to target best. It helps you reach out to customers instantly and accelerates your sales cycles, shortens the sales funnel, and it gives faster resolutions to provide improvised customer experiences. So you have a huge list of features that are available inside Zoho Sales IQ. So once you start exploring the platform, you'll find out more about them. Then we have the Zobot. The Zobot is a bot development platform that's available inside Zoho Sales IQ. And with this, Sales IQ users can build very compelling bots that automate customer interactions. So these bots can respond, act, and qualify your customers. So Zobots maintain conversations with your users in natural language. They understand the intent of what your visitors are trying to say. And finally, they send a response based on the business rules and data of the organization. So these Zobots can be run on both websites and on mobile applications. So you have absolutely nothing to worry about. You can easily deploy them on your websites or web apps or your mobile apps. So like we had already discussed, Zoho Sales IQ offers 5 different platforms currently to build your Zobots on. We have Sales IQ Scripts, webhooks, Watson Assistant, Zia Skills, and Dialogflow. So in this webinar, we'll be focusing on the Watson Assistant. So what is the Watson Assistant? The Watson Assistant, powered by IBM, helps you build a powerful bot assistant for your website. You can customize this Watson Assistant according to your website business needs and deploy it across multiple channels to bring help to your customers whenever and wherever they need it. So it's an offering. It's basically an offering for building conversational interfaces into any website or application. So most chatbots try to mimic human interactions, which can frustrate your users, and then a misunderstanding arises. So this is something that happens often on a website or inside a business. So this platform knows when to search for an answer from a knowledge base, when to ask for clarity, and when to direct your visitors to a human. All right. So you can integrate the Watson Assistant that you have built with the Zobot and then let it serve your website visitors effectively. So why is the Watson Assistant beneficial? It's easy to build and anyone can get started easily with it. It's a conversational bot building platform that works on the basis of NLP. It doesn't require any coding or developer knowledge to get started. So which is why it's easy for anyone to get started with it. All right, so you don't necessarily require coding knowledge to get started with building a Zobot on the Watson platform. It's powered by AI that understands your users and provides training recommendations as and when you build and run your assistant. So everything here is very spontaneous. So integrating your Watson Assistant with the Zobot can reach your visitors wherever they are. You have the flexibility to deploy this on your website or in a mobile app using our mobile SDKs. It supports 13 different languages, so you can communicate more effectively, and you can help customers who come from different language backgrounds and make them feel at home. You can establish your global market presence. You can use Sales IQ's input and display cards in the Watson Assistant for getting inputs and showing outputs to your visitors. You can also configure these bots to respond using buttons, auto picks, sliders, images, and links. So using buttons lets your users interact with bots in a way that standardizes conversations, right? So you have so many different options when you integrate the Watson Assistant with your Zobot. So Sales IQ also supports dynamic text in the Watson responses for your convenience, and you can use them in your trigger messages and inside your chat responses. So while we're building a Zobot with Watson, let me tell you what steps we're going to be following. So first, we'll be configuring basic Zobot information like we always do, following which we will authenticate the Watson Assistant and integrate it with the Zobot. We'll configure trigger responses to be triggered to website visitors. Then we'll create something called dialogue skills, intents, and assistants. And then finally, we'll look at how dynamic text works inside the Watson platform. So let me tell you how the flow goes. As usual, when the visitor lands on your website and matches the trigger criteria that was set by you, the Zobot responds with a trigger message. Otherwise, it's going to wait for the website visitor to start a chat. So when the visitor responds with a message, the execution moves on to the Watson platform, which matches the visitor's message with a dialogue or anything else node, followed by which all of the parameters in the visitor's message are collected. And then the engine checks for other Watson service actions and finally responds to the visitor's message using the dialogue response. So that is how the flow goes. So now let's start setting up our Zobot. Let's run back to the Sales IQ portal and navigate to Settings, Zobot, and then click on Add Bot. So now I'm going to start setting up my Zobot. I'm naming my bot and I'm going to give it a little description. And following that, I'm going to choose a website and some departments. Following that, I'm going to set visitor type. So I'm going to again stick to all visitors because I want to trigger messages to all of the visitors who land on my website. And then I'm going to set when I want to trigger my visitors. So this is lands on my site and spends more than 3 seconds, followed by working hours for the Zobot. And then I'm going to set the bot typing status to immediate. I'm also allowing handoff in order to let my visitors connect to human operators while they're in the middle of a conversation with the Zobot. And I'm going to configure some handoff text. And finally, I'm going to choose the platform. So now the Watson Assistant configuration window appears. So here you will have to enter the Watson host URL and the API key in the respective boxes and then authenticate the Watson Assistant. Usually when you have not integrated any Watson Assistant with the Zobot, you're going to see a different screen which will have 2 different fields for the host URL and the API keys that you will have to enter and then authenticate. Since I have already integrated one of my Watson Assistants to the Zobot, I'm getting this screen. So I'm going to click on change and show you how to include the host URL and the API key. So the host URL is the service point URL that you'll find under credentials, and this one is the API key, again that can be found under the credentials section. So to get the host URL and the API key, you need to log into your IBM Cloud, alright? And here on the left side, you will find Watson at the bottom. And now you're going to land on the Build with Watson page. Following this, you will have to click on Watson Services. So here you have 2 different categories, Browse Services and Existing Services. So when you click on Browse Services, you can see a bunch of templates that IBM already has. So in case any of these use cases match your requirements perfectly, you can just click on them and make use of them. Alright, or when you click on Existing Services, it's going to show you all of the existing services that you have. So now you can choose the service name under the services option, All right, I'm going to click on Watson Assistant New. So I already have an existing service, so I'm going to use that for this webinar. So here, when you click on the service name, you will be able to see the credentials. So the API key and the host URL. So I'm going to copy these credentials one by one and paste them inside my Sales IQ portal. So first, let me copy the URL, go back to my portal and paste it here. And then my API key. And I've pasted it and I'm going to save. So here the host URL and the API key have been changed. All right. So before that, you can see the name of the person who has integrated the Watson Assistant here. You can either change or integrate to a different Watson account. So if you're a portal owner or an administrator who created the Watson Assistant connection, then the Access the Watson Resources button will appear here on the top right corner. So since now we have not created the Zobot yet, we're not able to view it. All right. If you're a portal owner or administrator, then you will also be able to access the Zobot and edit it. For supervisors, they'll only be able to view the Zobot, but they cannot do any editing. And associates will not be able to access the Zobot. Following this, I will have to enter the assistant ID. So you will see a prompt that asks you to enter the assistant ID. So usually, what are these assistants and what are they used for? So an assistant is a cognitive bot that you can customize for your business needs and deploy across multiple channels to bring to your customers where and when they need it. So an assistant routes your customer queries to a skill which then provides the appropriate response. So this is how the actual flow goes. So dialogue skills return responses that are authored by you to answer some of the common questions that come from visitors, while search skills search for and return passages from existing self-service content to answer more complex inquiries. So the assistant ID is given to a bot to differentiate one Zobot from another. All right. So each Watson assistant created in your IBM Cloud account will have a distinguished assistant ID. You can use the ID to deploy the assistant inside your Zobot and to connect with your website visitors. If you wish to change the assistant, you can also change the assistant ID here in this section, and the bot you wish will be deployed to assist your website visitors. Remember, for all of this, you should have an IBM Cloud and an assistant built in. That is, to get the assistant ID, you need an IBM Cloud account and an assistant. All right. So let me show you how to get the assistant ID. So in the Watson Assistant dashboard, you need to launch the assistant and click on the Assistants tab. So the assistants that you've created so far will be listed, and you can choose the assistant you wish to deploy in your website via the Zobot, or you can also create a new assistant. So I'll also show you how to create a new assistant. So you need to click on Create Assistant in the Assistants tab and give your assistant a name. All right, so I'm going to say Willie, and I'm going to say and I'm going to click on Create Assistant. So now my assistant has been created. All right, so I'm going to go ahead with one of the existing assistants. So I'm clicking on Settings. And here, when I navigate to API details, I will be able to see the assistant ID that I require. All right, I can copy the assistant ID from the page and then paste it inside my portal. So let me do that. So next we'll look at how to create dialogue skills. So what is a skill? A skill is basically a container for artificial intelligence that enables an assistant to help your customers. So this assistant directs requests down the optimal path for solving customer queries, and then you can add skills so that your assistant can provide a direct answer to a common question or reference more generalized search results for something more complex. So in Watson, there are two types of skills involved, dialogue skill and search skill. So a dialogue skill contains training data and logic that enables an assistant to help your customers. It has intents. So an intent represents the purpose of a user's input, such as a question about say for example business locations or bill payments, etc. You can define an intent for each type of user request that you want your application to support. The name of an intent is always prefixed with a hash character. And to train this dialogue skill to recognize all of these intents that you've included, you need to supply lots of examples of user input and indicate which intents they map to. So this is pretty similar to the intents and training phrases that we had configured during our previous webinar on dialogue flow. Alright, so you have to do something similar here as well to train your Zobot. So a content catalog is provided that contains some pre-built common intents that you can add to your application rather than building your own. For example, most applications require a greeting intent, right? That starts with a dialogue with a user, say a good morning or a hello or something like that, something that implies a greeting. So you can add a general content catalog to add an intent that greets the user and does other useful things like maybe, to end the conversation or something. And then you have dialogues. So a dialogue is a branching conversation flow that defines how your application responds when it recognizes the defined intents and entities. So you use the dialogue editor to create conversations with users, providing responses based on intents and entities that you recognize inside their input. And then there are entities. So an entity represents a term or an object that is relevant to your intents and that provides a specific context for an intent. For example, an entity might represent a city where the user wants to find a business location, or maybe a hair salon, or the amount of bill payment. It can be any of these. So the name of an entity is always prefixed with the @ character. You can train the skill to recognize your entities by providing entity term, values, and synonyms, entity patterns, or by identifying the context in which an entity is typically used in a sentence. So a dialogue skill is basically a container for the artifacts that define the flow of a conversation that your assistant can have with your website visitors. So let's go ahead and create a skill now. So from the home page of the Watson Assistant, you need to click on add dialogue skill and then click on create skill. You need to give your skill a name here. So let me say that this is a new skill, and you need to add a description. This is optional. You can add a description, or you can skip it if you don't want to. And then you need to choose the language and then click on create dialogue skill. So you need to remember that you will have to create the intents first and then continue to creating the dialogue skills. So each assistant that you create inside the Watson platform is a bot agent, and the intents that you create are the functionalities. So make sure you create the intents and then go ahead to creating the dialogue skills. So these intents are the functionalities that will look at your visitors' queries and give them the right answer. So for each intent, the corresponding dialogues will be sent out. So that's the logic based on which this works. On doing this, you will land on the intents page of IBM Watson. So here we will be adding training data that was built by IBM to your workspace. In particular, you will give your assistant access to the general content catalog so that your dialogue can greet users and end conversations with them. All right. So here we need to click on Intents tab and click on Create Intent. And I'm going to give my intent a name. So I'm going to say greet visitors. So it cannot contain spaces. And a description. And I'm going to click on create intent. So my intent has been created, and now I will have to include training phrases here. They are called user examples on the Watson platform. All right. So let me say hello there. All right, so my examples are added. So these are sample invocations of questions that might be invoked by visitors. All right. So that's how you add examples. The more the number of examples, the more trained your bot is going to be. So following this, we're going to be building a dialogue. So a dialogue basically defines the flow of your conversation in the form of a logic tree. So this one matches the intents, that is, whatever the users say, to the responses, what the bot says back. So each node of the tree has a condition that triggers it based on the user intent. So we'll create a simple dialogue that handles, say maybe welcoming and ending. So we have two default dialogues here, one for welcome and one for anything else. All right, I'm going to click on this and show you how it looks. All right, so we are going to add a new one. Before we create a dialogue, I'm going to go ahead and create another intent. All right, I'm going to click on this and say end and create intent. Right, I'm going to add user examples. All right, and I'm going to go back. So I have two intents now, and now I'm going back to my dialogue section. And I'm going to add a new node. So here we have two default nodes that are available for every dialogue. All right, I'm going to add a node, calling it end, and if it recognizes hashtag end, I'm going to say thank you so much. Visit our website again. So I'm just going to respond with text and say thank you so much, please visit our website again. I can also add different response types. All right, I can say I can add a pause, I can add options, images, etc. All right, and then I'll configure what the assistant should do after this has been done. Wait for reply or jump to another action. All right, I'm going to stop and wait for reply. So you can delete these response types whenever and wherever you want to. All right, so you can also use the JSON editor or the context editor to configure these responses. So here inside this section, you can also add Zoho Sales IQ's input and display cards. You can add rich text responses in case you want to. So when you're done, you can click on the exit option to close this window. So I'll also tell you how to add Zoho Sales IQ's input or display cards inside the Watson Assistant. Let me show you just one example. I'm going to click on add node and I'm going to enter the node name. I'm going to say rating. Okay, so here I'm going to include a widget that will receive feedback from website visitors. Right, so I'm going to enter my condition. So I'm going to say if the assistant recognizes hashtag happy. I'm going to open the JSON editor and I'm just going to paste this. So this is Sales IQ's code for happiness rating that can be used inside Watson. So you can find these sample scripts inside our developer guides. You just have to copy paste the code from there and you can use it inside the Watson Assistant platform. So, and the assistant should wait for reply. So you can add conditions like this as well. You can add any number of input and display cards from Zoho Sales IQ inside the Watson Assistant platform to make your assistant's conversation with a visitor more appealing and attractive and not monotonous. So now that we're done configuring all of the features inside the Watson Assistant platform, we're going to navigate back to our Sales IQ portal and integrate the assistant with the Zobot. All right, so now I'm going to paste the assistant ID that I had created or obtained inside the IBM Cloud platform inside the Sales IQ portal. I've copied it and I'm going to paste it here. Following this, I will have to provide a trigger response in the text box. So you can only use the JSON format to configure trigger responses for your Zobot. Sales IQ does not support the plain text format. So this message can either be text, input cards, display cards, etc. So you should follow the JSON format given below to add the trigger response. All right, so remember that the message you've provided here will be triggered only if you have set the trigger inside your choose visitor type section. Following that, you will also have to define action failure responses. if you have defined an action for your bot, and in case the bot will not be able to complete the given action, then the messages configured here will be displayed to your visitors. So you can configure messages for messages that come in after standard business hours, when operators are not available or the operators do not exist, or when the maximum character limit has been exceeded. So once you're done with all of this, you need to click on create. So now you'll be able to see the Access Watson Assistant Resources button on the top right corner. All right, so you can also edit these settings that you have made so far at any point in time, and you will be able to see any change in functionality reflected here. You can view all the changes inside the preview window itself before you deploy your Zobot directly on the website. So every time you make a change, you just need to refresh the preview window and all of your changes will be. So finally, we have dynamic text in Watson. So the text that is bound to change is called as dynamic text, and we can configure dynamic text inside trigger responses and chat responses like we had done in all the other platforms in our previous webinars. So let me show you how to set up dynamic text on the Watson platform. Let's go back to the portal. So here I'm going to add some dynamic text inside my trigger response. And here inside replies, I'm going to add some dynamic text for my Zobot to greet my visitors with their name. So dynamic text is always populated by using the percentage symbol. All right. I'm adding visitor.name because I want to send out personalized chat invites to every visitor who lands on my website. So I'm going to click on save. Do you see this? So now the message here pops up along with my name. Similarly, all of the website visitors will be greeted along with their name. You have a lot of other dynamic text responses that you can configure inside either the trigger message or your chat responses. You can find them inside our help documentation. So now that we've reached the end of our webinar, let me give you a quick recap of what we had done. So we had added a new assistant inside the Watson Assistant platform, and for each of these assistants we had configured skills, and inside the skills we had added 2 different intents, and for each of these intents we had added user examples or training phrases to train the Zobot. Following which we had added a new node inside the dialog. We already had 2 default nodes inside, and we added one for the end node. So make sure you map the right assistant inside your Watson platform to the Zobot for your Zobot to greet your website visitors or respond to their queries. In case the assistant IDs do not match, your Zobot might not work on the website. So make sure you map the right assistant. For more help with respect to the same, do check out our help documentation and also write back to us at support@zohosalesiq.com. Don't forget to check out our Twitter channel for more updates on the Zobot. I'll see you in the next webinar. Until then, happy Zobotting!